Hi, I'm Rochelle Butler. Welcome to Eat, Move and Be Healthy. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking, indeed this series, we're going to be looking at gut health. But today I thought I'd explain exactly what that means. People appreciate that there's good and bad bacteria in your colon and that you need to maintain that for good health. But that's what I found is the basic understanding that people have. And so I thought it was worth taking that a bit further and explaining that. I'm going to explain exactly what a microbiome is, exactly what that is, and of course how the health of that microbiome, particularly in your gut, affects your health and why it's then obviously worth maintaining and keeping an eye out for. So we start with microbiome. Microbiome is an entire collection of microbes or microorganisms. And they are made up of bacteria, fungi, viruses, and archaea. It's a funny word, but another little living microorganism. And of course, some of these are harmful and detrimental to the health, but the majority of these are, of course, active contributors to health. And you'll find out how in a minute. So they exist everywhere. They are on the surface of countertops. They are all over your body, on your skin, all over the lining of your digestive tract, from your mouth right through to your colon. They line the lungs. They're everywhere, right? On your mobile phone, everywhere these microbes exist. And they are simply looking to live like any other microorganism. Each microbe has its own set of genes and DNA, its own set of genes. It's like I said, like an individual living organism. And it's interesting to note that any human being shares up to 99% of the same DNA as the next person, but only 5% microbial DNA. So your little microbiome is very unique to you. It'll only be similar to up to 5% similar to the person next to you. So that is quite a unique little template that we're looking at and tapping into. The relationship we have with these microorganisms is symbiotic in that they colonize the lining of our skin, our colon. The highest concentration of these are in our colon. And they colonize whatever suits their needs. So there'll be certain bacteria and other microorganisms that favor dark, warm, damp areas. So will colonize particularly perhaps in the armpits. Or there'll be others that require high concentration of oxygen, so may colonize the mouth. There'll be others that require no light, don't want any light or any oxygen, so will colonize the tiny folds within your colon. So they're constantly competing for real estate and for food. And so they position themselves in the environments that suit them best, and they work with you. So you provide that, some food and some real estate, and they have a role in which they provide us with helping with digestion. This is their two main roles: helping with digestion and collaborating with our immune system. The microbiota that you end up having is sort of fully developed by the time you're 3. That's going to be similar to what you have when you're an adult. But it initially forms as you pass through the birth canal. That's where at birth, you get your first dose of variety or various communities of bacteria and other microorganisms. Babies who are born by a C-section have been found to have a different set of microbiomes to those who are born vaginally, and they are said to have that which is whatever around them or the adults that they come into contact with. Babies then it also varies depending on if babies are breastfed or bottle fed, and then going home to the home place, the adults that they come into contact with, the siblings, their environment that they're living in. But by the time you're of around 3 years old, you've pretty much established your little unique microbiome. And of course, that can be altered or changed and affected throughout your life by what you eat and your lifestyle and environment. But it's pretty similar from there. So the role of these microorganisms, or the bacteria particularly in the colon, is to transform your food or help digest it, and of course to collaborate with your immune system. So with regards to helping transform your food, digestion occurs, we'll chew, and a lot of digestion occurs in the small intestine and absorption. But the microorganisms also help in the digestion and form a byproduct which can be beneficial to us, like vitamins K and B12, which the body can't produce by itself. So there's an indication of the symbiotic relationship. They get fed, and of course they produce this vitamin B12 and vitamin K, very important for us. But you also get, they also produce, they also help digest non-digestible carbohydrates, which pass through our small intestine undigested into the colon, which we wouldn't be able to digest if we didn't have that bacteria. And what happens is the bacteria creates these metabolites, which when they are, is produced when they're allowed, the bacteria is allowed to ferment these non-digestible carbohydrates. And the produces short-chain fatty acids, which is quite well known and studied. And short-chain fatty acids are really instrumental in helping to maintain the lining of the colon and helping, and you'll see why that's important when we talk about the immune system. But maintaining the lining of the colon and keeping that strong and healthy and not letting just any old thing to pass through is quite essential to your gut health. But of course, not all of the metabolites or the byproducts of what the bacteria's actions is helpful. Some of it, in fact, can be harmful. There is a metabolite produced called TMAO, trimethylamine N oxide, TMAO. Now, TMAO is produced by the bacteria when foods like red meat and egg yolks are eaten. Now, previously, cardiovascular disease is linked to eating too much red meat or too many egg yolks, but the research now shows that actually it's the high concentration of the TMAO in your blood that puts you at risk for cardiovascular disease. And so this is where your unique microbiome comes in, because I may have just the right amount of microorganisms that help digest red meat and egg yolks, for instance, and not produce too much or dangerous levels of TMAO into my bloodstream, whereas you may have a lack of or less of that beneficial bacteria, and therefore your levels change. And so that's also, you also start to see now how certain people become more predisposed to different conditions. The second role of these microorganisms is to collaborate with your immune system. Now, it's worth understanding that your gut has its own immune system called the gut-associated lymphoid tissue. And it plays a big part or big role in your overall immune system or immune control. And so that lymphatic tissue in the gut, that immune system, is constantly trying to work out, decipher between what are pathogens or disease-causing elements that have found their way into the colon or into the gut. And, oh no, okay, that's good. That's a piece of apple, for instance. We could do with that. We're happy with that. Constantly trying to decipher between the two. And what you want ultimately is it to be working at optimum level. What you want it to react, but not overreact. Because an overreaction would be like sending too many soldiers to fight the army. It would result in massive cellular activity and potentially damaging healthy tissue. But ultimately, that would result in inflammation. That is the body's way of fighting any infection or pathogen, is to create the inflammation. And if it's overactive, too much reaction can lead to inflammation. And of course, underreaction or no reaction will just mean you get ill. That inflammation, of course, can be systemic. So the whole body is affected with different conditions, inflammatory conditions like that, or just specifically like an organ. Or so if the pancreas becomes inflamed, then you get what's called pancreatitis, and it affects the specific functioning of that tissue or that organ. But other inflammatory diseases include asthma, eczema, arthritis. A lot of the autoimmune diseases include inflammation. So you can see how your immune system is it's necessary for your immune system to function at an optimal level. Now, where the gut bacteria become very helpful here is they're constantly sending signals back and forward to that lymphoid tissue in the gut, helping it to make sense and teaching it which are pathogens and which aren't. If you, in a very basic way, if you imagine, this specific type of bacteria there, saying to your own tissue, yeah, I know him from before, he's not somebody we know, we need to get rid of him. And that's a very basic explanation, but that's what's going on all the time. These to and fro, these signals are being sent out. So you really do need an optimum gut bacteria balance to be able to help your immune system. And again, that's an example of how the microorganism, the microbes, are working in a symbiotic relationship with us. And again, why it becomes essential that you have a really good and well-balanced gut bacteria. So it becomes important to maintain or even change your gut microbiome to prevent disease and sickness. And it's not as simple as blaming one type of bacteria. In fact, as I've explained in some of the examples I've given, it can possibly sometimes be because of an absence of a certain bacteria. And then that's where you're looking at probiotics and introducing a certain bacteria to colonize the area. So it's bizarrely its own little ecosystem of needing some good bacteria, some bad bacteria, not too much of the bad and also not too much of the good, because they keep each other in balance. It's this constant balance game. And at the minute, technology is really coming forward, and we're starting to identify now with what they're working towards mapping out that microbiome and starting to see which lack of or too much of a certain bacteria or microorganisms is related to a certain condition or illness, and then preempting it. A lot to take on board, but I hope you understand it slightly better now and really understand the sort of simple concept, really, that you are whatever you put in your mouth, because what you put in your mouth either feeds or kills off different bacteria, which ultimately has a knock-on effect to your overall health. Subscribe below for more information and to be updated or notified on when the next episodes in this series come out. And leave me a comment to let me know if you found this information useful and it's clarified your understanding on what a microbiome is and, in fact, the importance of gut health.